Section 1. Hey guys, tonight we climb a ziggurat under the fading heat of a Babylonian sunset because someone, somewhere in the ancient city, is trying to bake the moon. The year? It's hard to pin down. Somewhere between 1800 and 500 BCE, give or take a royal overthrow. The city? Babylon, the glittering eye of Mesopotamia. You stand barefoot on dusty stone steps, ascending slowly as the sky bruises purple. Incense drips from above. Something spicy, like myrrh, or the inside of a very holy spice rack. Down below, the Euphrates snakes lazily around the city's edge, glinting like melted silver. But you're not looking at rivers. You're watching the moon. A wan, ghostly crescent. Still faint, still rising, still raw. See, tonight isn't just another priestly performance of praise be to this or that celestial orb. You see, tonight isn't just another priestly performance of praise be to this or that celestial orb. No. Tonight, a handful of star priests and temple bakers are planning something bolder. They're going to recreate the moon, literally, using heat, ash, and a dough you can allegedly eat or worship depending on the temperature. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here, and drop a comment with your location and the time you're listening. Let's push it up to 70. Let's be the comment that changes the world and sets a time where healthcare is access and freedom. I'm the comment with your location and the time you're listening. I'm always curious who else is falling asleep under strange moons. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You reach the top. The ziggurat's final platform opens like a stone raft floating over the city. The view. Chaos and geometry. Babylon sprawls below you in right angles and flickering torches. To the north, the Ishtar Gate glows blue in the moonlight, the lions on its tiles flickering in the firelight like they're mid-prow. But your focus is behind you now, on the square oven ringed with bricks the color of old blood, hissing quietly in the twilight. Two men in tall felt hats stand beside it, arguing in what sounds like math disguised as prayer. One gestures wildly toward a wax tablet marked with circles, dots, and squiggles. Babylon's own recipe for orbital motion. You can't help but wonder if this was the original cook's almanac or just a very passionate doodle. In the center of the oven space lies a shallow basin, half clay, half obsidian, meant to hold what they're calling Nana's cradle, Nana, the moon god, or Sin if you prefer his other name. Either way, he apparently appreciates offerings of pastry. A young apprentice stumbles past you with a jug of water, sloshing against his tunic, his eyes wide and jittery. You catch a whisper as he mutters, "It has to cool before second moonrise, or the sky will split again." Very reassuring. You notice a series of clay bowls stacked along the oven's edge, each labeled in cuneiform. Date syrup, river silt, crushed bone. You blink. Maybe you misread that last one. The scent is rich and unfamiliar. Something like wet earth after lightning, and a whisper of roasted nuts. You're not sure if your stomach is curious or afraid. The priests begin chanting. The low hum swells into a steady rhythm, echoing off the sandstone walls, bouncing across time. This isn't just singing. It's celestial choreography. According to one of those clay tablets, sound was believed to stir the gods, like shaking a snow globe full of divine moods. You notice the moon again, higher now, clearer, almost taunting. Historians still argue whether these Beka moon rituals were meant to duplicate, summon, or replace the moon. Some say the Babylonians feared it would disappear unless replicated on Earth. Others claim it was symbolic, a kind of divine baking cosplay. Personally, it's starting to feel a bit like both. Your fingers trace a groove in the stone, some ancient scratch left by an earlier moon chef. You imagine a harried apprentice centuries ago, carving a nervous doodle as the batter refused to rise. Suddenly, a gust of wind licks the flame. Sparks leap like startled insects, and one of the priest bakers shrieks, "Too early! Too bright!" He slams a bronze shield over the oven mouth, and the glow dims. Apparently, even artificial moons must obey the timing of the sky. It's getting chilly. That kind of bone-level, desert at night cold that feels like it's trying to talk you into regret. You wrap your arms tighter, watching the shadows dance on the ancient bricks. Then you hear it. A low humph, like someone dropped a mountain-sized souffle. The ziggurat rumbles. Just a little. Maybe it's your imagination, or maybe the old temple is reacting to the ceremony, stretching its joints after centuries of silence. A priest catches your eye and smiles with too many teeth. "You're just in time," he says. "Tonight we add the yolk." Before you can ask what that means, he uncorks a clay bottle and pours something thick and golden into the center of the cradle. It smokes on contact with the obsidian, releasing a scent you can't describe, like nostalgia, dipped in fire. Then the drums start. Slow, irregular, heart-like. You can feel them in your ribs. One of the priests raises his arms and calls out in Old Akkadian, words you don't understand but which sound suspiciously like an order to the sky. "Rise when I tell you to, not before." You look again at the moon. It glows steady, still indifferent, still whole. You can't help but wonder what happens if their baking fails. Do the gods send a replacement? Or just cancel night? Either way, you're not leaving yet. There's something about this place, this oven, this ritual, this strange dessert for deity that feels like it has its own gravity, and it's pulling you in. Section 2. The cradle is steaming now, and the scent drifting from it makes your stomach lurch and growl in equal measure. It's not quite food, not quite incense. More like what memory would smell like if you could bottle it. You edge closer, drawn in by the soft sizzle coming from the center of the obsidian pan. Here comes the dough. The bakers appear again, 4 of them this time, younger, jittery, wearing the simple linen tunics of temple initiates. 4 of them this time, younger, jittery, wearing the simple linen tunics of temple initiates. 4 of them this time, younger, jittery, wearing the simple linen tunics of temple initiates. Each carries a chunk of pale grayish paste, cradled like a newborn lamb. The dough is moon-colored, more or less silvery from ground pearl barley, dusty from pulverized silt dredged from the banks of the Euphrates. There's a sheen to it, like it's sweating under the starlight. One apprentice hums under his breath, a lullaby to Nana, the moon god. Another kneels and begins shaping the dough in slow spirals, pressing thumbprints along the edges. These aren't just loaves, they're lunar effigies, bready votives sculpted to mirror the waxing crescent currently dangling above you. You lean in and catch sight of a tablet sitting near the edge of the oven. It's covered in the tiny wedge-shaped markings of cuneiform. If you squint, you can just make out parts of it. Grind barley blessed by starlight. Mix with milk from goat born under solstice. Add honey gathered before the eclipse. Historians still debate whether these were literal instructions or symbolic recipes layered with metaphor. One fringe theory suggests the dough wasn't even meant to be baked. It was pressed into molds and left to harden in moonlight alone. But tonight, you watch as they fold, twist, and shape the raw moon stuff like it's destined for something warmer. The dough has a strange elasticity. It stretches without breaking, clings to itself with a will of its own. One priest rolls a ball between his palms and holds it up toward the moon, whispering, "Nana, may your belly always be full." You resist the urge to giggle, but honestly, you've said weirder things at brunch. Suddenly, one of the initiates drops a hunk of dough. It hits the stones with a wet plop, and there's a horrified gasp. Everyone freezes. The oven sizzles louder. The moon does not respond. A moment of panic, until an older priest shuffles forward and calmly scrapes the dough from the stones. He lifts it high and mutters something about blessed imperfection. Then, with a flair that feels half holy, half cooking show, he folds the fallen dough into a fresh shape, a half-moon cradle with one slightly burnt edge. Flawed like us, he says, but still offered. And just like that, everyone breathes again. The dough is arranged now in concentric patterns inside the obsidian basin, surrounded by a wreath of dried date leaves and crushed shells. There's a rhythm to it, a visual poetry. Spirals, crescents, ripples, somehow evoking tides and eclipses at the same time. One apprentice pours a thin stream of date syrup in a spiral from center to edge, murmuring, "The sea around the moon." You glance at a nearby priest, hoping for some modern context. He just grins and says, "It's lunar gastronomy, you wouldn't understand." A breeze kicks up. The air tastes dusty and slightly sweet, something between cinnamon and heat stroke. You remember that the Babylonians didn't really separate science from ritual from dinner. Everything was cosmic, even snacks. One fun fact? They believed the moon influenced not only tides and moods, but digestion. A full moon meant you'd absorb more from what you ate. Nutrients, yes, but also dreams, hence the need to bake with intent. Fringe scholars today still write papers on whether this lunar nutrition theory might have influenced early humoral medicine. Another baker walks past you, carrying a bowl of fine blue-gray powder. Ground lapis lazuli, if you're not mistaken. He sprinkles it gently over the dough like powdered sugar, only it sparkles under the moonlight. It's stunning. Also, probably toxic. But that's the thing. This isn't a meal for mortals. This is an offering, a performance, maybe even a bluff. Bake a convincing enough moon and maybe the real one won't leave. That's the hope anyway. You take another look at the actual moon in the sky. It's risen higher now, pale and quiet, glowing like a shy god. You can almost believe it's watching this ritual with amusement. There's a moment of stillness, no chanting, no footsteps, just the crackle of the fire and the soft settling of warm dough in a sacred pan. Then, movement. The priests circle the basin once, clockwise, then again counterclockwise. One of them begins to recite something rhythmic, punctuated by gentle claps. You catch a few familiar words: silver, goat, wheel, sky womb. It's half poem, half spell. You try to follow, but your mind drifts, back to the scent. It's changing. The dough's outer layer is browning slightly, caramelizing in the flickering heat. There's now a hint of toast, a promise of softness inside. It smells almost good, like a bakery hidden in the clouds. You wonder, if you were to take just one bite, would it taste like bread? Or moonlight? The ritual begins to crescendo. Drums again, a steady heartbeat building under the chanting. One initiate lifts a thin bronze mirror, angling it to catch the moonlight and reflect it into the pan. The dough glistens. Some whisper it's glowing on its own. Suddenly, you're handed a small clay cup. The apprentice offering it looks exhausted, but hopeful. "Moon milk," he says. "For witnesses." You sip. It's warm and slightly spiced. Maybe cardamom, maybe goat. The priests begin a new chant. This one is softer, more lullaby than invocation. One voice sings, "Dough of Nana, rise not in pride, but as moonlight slow and wide. Silver breath and belly bright, keep our night from endless night." You close your eyes. The heat, the rhythm, the smell, it all sinks into you like a warm blanket. You're not sure if this is religion or a really well-funded bake-off. Either way, something is rising. And it might just be the moon. Section 3. The dough is puffing now. Not fast like a yeast-fed bread in a hot oven. No, this is slower, deeper. It's more like a tide swelling under moon pool. You watch, entranced, as a pale dome begins to form in the center of the obsidian basin, the edges crisp delicately, browning in petal shapes, while the top rises in gentle heartbeat pulses. Someone behind you whispers, "We've reached the waxing gibbous stage." Part 5. The waxen gibbous. Someone behind you whispers, "We've reached the waxen gibbous stage." You don't dare laugh this time. The air above the cradle shimmers slightly, not just from the heat. There's a mirage quality to it, like something's trying to become visible just outside your focus. A few older priests start rearranging their tablet stacks. The cuneiform is no longer about ingredients. It's full of numbers, arcs, stars, and hour marks. You catch one phrase carved before completion. "Saturn shall be blamed." That's oddly specific. You step closer to one of the tablets, careful not to disturb the sacred baking. The clay is sun-baked, cracked, and marked in grid-like tables. You realize it's part recipe, part calendar, part wishful math. Historians now know the Babylonians had shockingly advanced astronomy, tracking lunar cycles with near-modern precision. But here, it feels less scientific and more desperate. Like cooking instructions for a sky that keeps forgetting to rise. Fringe scholars sometimes call this culinary cosmology, the belief that recreating cosmic events with food could influence their actual occurrence. It sounds ridiculous until you stand here, oven warm, moon overhead, and see everyone taking it so seriously that even your skeptical brain starts to hum in tune. You watch one young priest nervously correct the angle of a thin bronze rod pointing skyward. "It's off by half a finger," he mutters. "That's a waning omen if we don't adjust." His companion responds, deadpan, "Then let's pretend our fingers were fatter." You smile despite yourself. The ritual is about to enter what they call the mirror hour, when the position of the real moon matches the artificial one's placement in the sacred oven. It's a delicate moment. Some priests insist it must be observed in silence. Others say humming encourages a better crust. They compromise, of course. This is Babylon, with a humming silence. Just the low tone of several mouths buzzing under their breath like lazy bees. You glance to your right. Another apprentice is sketching something on a clay slab. Not words. An image. The moon above, the dough below, connected by a long vertical line. At the bottom of the drawing is a bowl, cracked in two. You raise an eyebrow. "Is that bad?" you ask. He shrugs. "Might just be lunch." More than one historian has argued that some of these moon-baking nights were symbolic forecasts, massive public rituals designed to encode agricultural predictions. If the moon dough rises cleanly and cools without cracks, expect a good harvest. If it bubbles, smokes, or collapses, prepare the granaries. Tonight, as the dome glows golden and steams gently under the stars, things are looking promising. But nothing ever stays that simple in Babylon. Suddenly, a gust of wind streaks across the top of the ziggurat, sharp, cool, unsettling. It kicks dust into the basin. The high priest frowns. The glow dims. The dough hiccups. No, not literally. But there's a tremble in the rising. You swear the center deflates. Just a whisper. One priest clutches his chest. Another mutters, "The recipe's off. We misread the cycle." Or, "The barley was from a cursed canal again." A runner sprints up the steps with another tablet, this one fresh and wet with clay. "From the astronomers," he yells. "They've recalculated the moon's arc. We're off by 7 degrees and 1 shekel." "Shekel?" someone asks. "In spiritual weight," the messenger replies, panting. The entire operation pauses. It's a moment of tension so thick you could spread it on flatbread. You take a deep breath and notice something new. Smoke, curling at the edges of the dough. Just a thin, anxious wisp. But in Babylon, even smoke has meanings. The priests begin to debate the omen. Some say smoke during mirror hour means the moon has accepted the offering. Others claim it means Nana is coughing. The ambiguity is very Babylonian. You spot a man seated cross-legged near the oven, carving fresh lines into a tablet with a stylus of gold. He's older, fatter, utterly calm. His robe bears the triple crescents of a lunar archivist. His job? Record every moonbake's details down to temperature changes and which priests sneezed. You shuffle over. Has the moon ever exploded? You ask. He looks up, surprised, then chuckles. Once, he says, but that was mostly metaphor. Did the loaf explode? He leans in, voice low. A batch during King Amel Marduk's reign split straight down the center and hissed steam shaped like a scorpion. Some claimed it predicted a rebellion. Others blamed the apprentice for over-kneading. Historians still argue whether this famous bake actually occurred or was later invented to justify a palace coup. Either way, the story stuck, and tonight, you're hyper-aware of every little bubble in the dough. A bell rings, not a temple bell. This one is ceramic, small, high-pitched. It marks the end of mirror hour. The dough must now begin to cool naturally, without ritual interference. You watch as priests step back in unison, hands behind their backs, faces blank and reverent. A bowl of cool water is passed around. Each person dips their fingers and touches their eyelids. A symbolic cleansing. You follow suit. The water is cold and sweet, with a faint metallic aftertaste. The moon above glows brighter now. No change in shape, but something about its light feels more full, as if it's leaning in a little. One last priest steps forward and, using a feather made from hammered tin, gently brushes the dough's crust. Bits of ash fall away, revealing a soft, glowing surface beneath. It really does look lunar, pocked, golden, almost alive. You don't know what happens next. You don't know if they'll serve it, bury it, launch it at Saturn in protest, but you know this: the moon is watching. And so are you. Section 4. The moon stares down. Silent, smug, whole. You've been watching it for hours now, but it never seems to blink. It just glows like it knows something you don't. The priests aren't celebrating yet. In fact, their mood has taken a curious turn. The dome of dough, now gently cooling, is being measured with an obsidian caliper, down to fractions of a knuckle. They debate whether the rise achieved proper lunar bulge. Apparently, flat moon loaves are not only a cosmic embarrassment, but, according to one clay tablet, a sign of pending misrule and soggy dreams. Again, oddly specific. You're about to ask what qualifies as soggy dreams when someone yells, "Bring the taster!" Oh boy. Out from a shaded alcove waddles a small man draped in an absurdly embroidered robe, silver-painted sandals, and a necklace shaped like a crescent moon nibbling on a fig. His eyebrows are enormous. His stomach is spherical. His name, they whisper, is Nibzu, though some call him the one who bit the crescent. Nibzu is the high taster of temple loaves, an esteemed and entirely unnecessary role that seems to blend gourmand, prophet, and part-time daredevil. According to temple lore, he once tasted a moon wafer baked under a blood eclipse and chipped his tooth so badly it whistled for 3 years. That's the story, anyway. You'd bet your sandals he made that up for attention. Nibzu approaches the oven like he's greeting an old friend, or maybe an enemy he owes money to. He bows once, dramatically, then produces a curved bronze knife and slices a delicate sliver from the outer rim of the moonloaf. The crowd hushes. Even the night wind stills. He chews slowly, eyes closed, nose flaring like he's smelling ghost bread. The priests lean in. One child sneezes and is quietly removed from the roof. Finally, Nibzu swallows. He opens one eye. "Tangier than expected," he says. "Hints of river iron, but overall, worthy of a moon." The crowd exhales in one synchronized breath. A few even clap. The oven hisses a little quieter, as if relaxing. Historians still argue whether figures like Nibzu were real or satirical inventions of temple bureaucracy. Some clay records suggest a designated moon tester existed in the kitchens of great ziggurats, though fringe theories claim they doubled as spies, tasked with noting omens and writing food reviews for the gods. Nibzo waddles away, triumphant, one hand already reaching for another fig. He mutters, "Better than last equinox. That one tasted like regret." You stifle a laugh, only to see a priest glaring at you. "This is sacred," he hisses. "No giggling. Sorry," you whisper. "I'm just tired." He softens. "That's the correct state," he nods. "Drowsiness pleases Nana." Okay, that explains a lot. Suddenly, one of the astronomers begins shouting from the edge of the platform. He holds up a fresh wax tablet and points furiously at the sky. Apparently, they've just discovered a shadow anomaly, something moving across the lower arc of the moon. Could be a bird, could be a sign, could be a bit of barley stuck on the lens. Panic flutters briefly. The priests recircle the oven, some muttering, others performing frantic gestures involving their elbows and eyebrows. Nibzu just keeps chewing. Then, nothing happens. The moon keeps glowing. The loaf keeps cooling. Eventually, someone snorts. False alarm. It was probably just a passing bat. Or Ishtar showing off again. Ah, yes, the other gods. You'd almost forgotten about them in all this doughy drama. Ishtar, goddess of love, war, and questionable timing, has a reputation for hijacking rituals with sudden starbursts or raining frogs. More than one tablet suggests that moon bakes occasionally failed, not due to bad barley or burnt ovens, but divine jealousy. If Ishtar appears in owl form, one warning reads, you must begin again with fresh milk and a new song. You begin to suspect this whole system operated on a balance of astronomy, culinary experimentation, and petty divine bickering. Like a celestial bake-off, judged by immortal in-laws. Still, things seem to be back on track. The loaf, still glowing faintly, is now being carefully removed from the cradle. Two priests use long-handled paddles to lift it into a gold-lipped platter shaped like a full moon. The symbolism is so on the nose it almost hurts. But you have to admit, it's gorgeous. The surface shimmers with ash glitter and lapis flecks. Steam curls up from its crust, like stories being told in reverse. The platter is paraded once around the oven. Everyone bows. You awkwardly mimic them, unsure if the angle of your neck matters, probably. Everything seems to matter here. The high priest steps forward. His robe rustles like old parchment. He raises his arms and intones. May Sin, keeper of the night path, accept this baked form, risen by hand, shaped by will, lit by sacred fire. Let this loaf stand watch when we sleep, so that the sky does not forget us. The crowd echoes the final line, so that the sky does not forget us. It's strange, moving even. For all the mystery and mild absurdity of baking a celestial body, the purpose is heartbreakingly simple. Don't be forgotten. The purpose is heartbreakingly simple. Don't be forgotten. Don't let the stars pass over without noticing your little oven-lit life. You glance once more at the real moon, still watching, still glowing, still whole. For now. Section 5. The glow from the moon loaf has dimmed now. Not vanished, just settled, like it's taken a deep breath and is finally resting. It rests on its golden platter, steaming gently, ringed by ash and reverence. You expect the ritual to slow down, maybe shift into chants and hymns. But no. Instead, the priests unveil something new. Ovens. Lots of them. Ah, red. You hadn't noticed before. Cleverly tucked into alcoves along the ziggurat walls are a series of kilns, each shaped like a phase of the moon. There's a thin one like a sliver, a swollen one like a full moon, and a strange, asymmetrical one that looks like it's arguing with geometry. Each kiln flickers to life with its own flame, some low and blue, others high and orange. The ziggurat glows like a constellation turned inside out. You blink at the scene. Are they baking more moons? No, says a voice beside you. They're calibrating. You turn to see a woman in a dark robe etched with white chalky swirls. She looks tired in a way that feels intentional. Each oven matches a lunar phase, she explains. We compare how each loaf rises, burns, or collapses to anticipate the next month's mood. Like astrology? She shrugs. Like insurance. The logic is strange, but not illogical. By baking loaves to mirror each phase of the moon, the priest can divine what that phase might bring. A cracked crescent loaf might mean political unrest. A puffed full moon loaf could signal trade prosperity. One tablet, rather morbidly, claims that if the waning gibbous loaf catches fire mid-bake, a noble child will fall from a roof. Historians still debate whether this was actual divination or a very roundabout excuse for why the Bakers Guild controlled half the city's property. You're led toward the crescent-shaped oven, where two young bakers are sliding a loaf inside. It's a smaller one, more symbolic, less feast-sized. They chant softly as they work. Waxing moon, gentle flame, bake us truth without shame. You notice the ovens are tuned like instruments. Some hum in different pitches. The wind through their mouths, creating eerie chords. One priest walks among them with a reed flute, matching tone to oven as if tuning a cosmic symphony. It's absurd. It's beautiful. It's Babylon. A fringe academic once theorized that these kilns weren't just ritual tools. They were ancient analog computers. The heat, time, and flame color were all inputs that produced readings in the form of how the dough responded. Over time, these readings became predictions. It's speculative, of course, but standing here, you can't deny the theatrical precision. You turn your attention to the waxing gibbous oven. The loaf inside is browning too fast. A cluster of priests argues over the fuel mixture. Too much palm wood. No, the air holes are clogged with bat guano again. Someone fetches the tongs, and a mid-bake rescue begins. The loaf is flipped, adjusted, incanted over, and kissed by a very determined elderly man who claims this settles its soul. You decide not to ask. Another oven, the full moon replica, suddenly emits a loud pop, and a puff of steam bursts out the top. Everyone freezes. Then cheers. Apparently, that's a good sign. It means the moon will speak clearly this month, says the chalk-robed woman, scribbling something on a wax tablet. You wonder what clearly means. Fewer omens? Better lighting for dramatic monologues? An owl hoots in the distance, and several priests make identical signs with their thumbs and index fingers. A kind of celestial knock on wood. The owl is either Ishtar's cousin or a nosy bird. The line blurs here. The baking continues. You start to notice differences in dough behavior. How the first loaf cooled with gentle, breath-like cracks, while this second one seems to hum slightly when tapped. Could be the heat. Could be your tired brain inventing music. You remember one detail from a fringe theory, that during these rituals, some participants claim to hear lunar voices. Not words exactly, but feelings. Regret, joy, longing. As if the moon, when recreated just right, reflected not just light, but emotion. You scoff internally, then realize you've been humming along with the oven tones for 5 minutes. The full moon loaf is removed now. Its top is burnished like bronze. The priests murmur their approval. It's placed beside the main loaf, forming a celestial bread tableau. You're offered a small taste. This time, not from the sacred centerpiece, but from one of the phase bakes. The slice is warm, lightly sweet, with a strange saltiness you can't place. Not unpleasant. It tastes thoughtful. I don't get it, you admit, licking crumbs from your thumb. Is this all really about the moon? The chalk-robed woman tilts her head. Maybe. Or maybe it's about remembering that we live under pattern, and sometimes we need rituals to feel like we belong in them. You look up at the moon again, unchanged, unconcerned, and yet, somehow, now it feels closer. Section 6. The moment it happens, nobody breathes. You're leaning near the waning crescent oven, watching steam curl like ribbons into the night, when a priest to your left gasps and points skyward. The moon is gone. Not hidden, not clouded. Gone. You snap your head up. The spot where the moon sat, smug and glowing just moments ago, is now a velvet black smear. A negative space so perfect it's painful. Someone drops a bronze bowl. A baby cries, though you're pretty sure there were no babies up here. You're witnessing a lunar eclipse, but of course no one here uses that term. This is moonfall, or the gulping, the moment when the heavens bite their own tongue. Chaos simmers. The high priest shouts something that sounds suspiciously like, "Why tonight?" A junior astronomer sprints past, tablet under arm, robes flapping like an anxious bat. He's mumbling calculations that sound like multiplication tables sung backward. An old woman begins weeping into a bowl of flour. You feel it too, a tug in the gut, like gravity changed its mind. The air is heavier. The ziggurat looms taller. The moonloaf on the golden platter seems dimmer now, like it's losing its signal without the real one to back it up. Someone mutters, "We baked it too well. We offended the sky." Ah, of course. The baked moon was too convincing, and now the original has decided to retire. Historians still argue whether lunar eclipses prompted emergency rituals like this one, or whether the rituals were timed to coincide with known eclipses as a way of showing magical control. Either way, you're in the middle of a full-blown celestial panic bake. The priests regroup, fast. A circle forms around the moonloaf, now flickering uncertainly in its dish. Someone rings a tiny bell shaped like a turtle. "You don't ask? Realign the ovens," a priest yells. "Mirror the darkness," another one shouts, which doesn't make sense but sounds dramatic enough to follow. One of the phase ovens is relit, this time with blackened wood and powdered obsidian sprinkled into the flames. The fire turns strange, low, murky, more ember than blaze. The bakers begin shaping a new loaf, this one black and flat, with crushed lentils and shadow-dyed barley. The bakers are spinning in the same loaf, this one black and flat, with crushed lentils and shadow-dyed barley. You ask someone what they're making. "A countermoon," he says. Like that explains everything. You nod. Apparently, a countermoon is a dough effigy, meant to reflect the moon's absence. Rather than honor its light, it embraces its hiding. The dough is folded inward with a concave curve like a bitten apple. Symbols of sleep, blindness, and cool stone are etched into the crust. Another priest begins drawing circles in the ash with a burnt olive branch. It's unclear if this is to summon Nana or just calm him down. "Does this happen often?" you whisper. "Twice a decade," someone replies. 3 times if the bakers have been arguing. You decide not to press that point. Someone brings out a tablet labeled, "If Moon is Swallowed." The instructions are equal parts prayer, recipe, and apology. There's a line that reads, "If the god hides, feed him what he fears." His own echo. What does that even mean? You find out when they pull out a second moon loaf, the unfinished one from earlier, and begin crumbling it gently into a bronze bowl, a kind of cosmic breadcrumb trail. It's stirred with oil and whisper prayers, then smeared onto small flat stones and placed in a circle. "They're offering it back," says a nearby apprentice, like a child returning a stolen toy, but with more calories. The chanting begins again, slower now, lower, like thunder trying not to wake someone. "Loaf to sky, loaf to sky, we meant no mock, we meant no lie." You find yourself humming along. The darkness above remains stubborn. The moon is still swallowed, hidden behind the curve of Earth, though of course no one here knows that. To them, the moon has stepped out in anger, perhaps gone to sulk behind a star, Fringe interpretations of Babylonian ritual suggest this moment, when the moon disappears, was deeply feared. Not just because of light, but because of order. The moon was their calendar, their night watchman, their cosmic fingerprint. When it vanished, reality felt negotiable. You look again at the black loaf now baking in the shadow oven. It's not pretty. It's lumpy and uneven, sprinkled with burnt onion skins and ash-soaked seed. That's the point, says a priest. It's not meant to be eaten. It's meant to be understood. You squint. Understood as what? A warning, he replies, or a second chance. The countermoon is done. They lift it with a thick leather paddle, place it on a cold slab of stone, and surround it with tiny clay figurines. Sheep, owls, a pair of fish arranged nose to tail. It's a lunar shrine in miniature. Primitive, quiet, trembling. And then the sky shifts. A sliver of moon reappears above the horizon, just a thread of silver. The crowd gasps. Someone collapses in relief. A drummer taps out a single beat, like the start of a new song. The priests fall to their knees. You just exhale, and the moon loaf glows again. And the moon loaf glows again. Section 7. The drums don't stop this time. They shift. A slower rhythm, now, a kind of lunar heartbeat. One boom, pause, two softer thuds. It's hypnotic. A priest calls it the return cadence, meant to coax the moon fully back into view. Whether it works or not is irrelevant. You're already swaying. The mood on the ziggurat has changed. Tension hasn't vanished. It's fermented, settled into something fizzier. Hope? Maybe. Or just the relief that comes after not being smote. That's when you hear the tap, tap, tap of a cane on baked clay. Turning, you see him, the goat-footed astronomer. He emerges from the stairwell like a storm cloud in sandals, robe stained with soot and ink, and one leg wrapped in layers of dyed linen. His cane is carved like a serpent swallowing the stars, and his beard forks like it's in mid-thought. "Move!" he croaks, and somehow people do. This is Agun Kalum, or as people mutter, the one who wagered against the moon. A title said with a mix of awe, exasperation, and the kind of concern normally reserved for someone trying to climb a palm tree upside down. He hobbles to the center, eyes scanning the remains of the interrupted bake. Then the countermoon loaf. Then the sky. "Amateurs," he mutters. "You panicked and started feeding the gods like they're stray cats." No one argues. "Give me barley," he demands, "and the dark milk." You don't know what the dark milk is. You don't want to. But someone hands him a jug, and he sniffs it approvingly. Agun Kalam begins his own ritual, entirely ignoring the formal priests. He kneels, awkwardly, painfully, and starts drawing circles in the flour scattered across the platform, then builds a strange grid using black lentils and bits of broken pottery. "What's he doing?" you whisper. "Math," says the nearest initiate, in a tone equal parts reverent and terrified. Apparently, Agun is one of the lunar counters, a rare class of stargazers who calculate the moon's patterns not with charts, but through physical representations. Grains, oils, shadows. It's half science, half interpretive dance. One tablet claimed he once predicted a moonrise by watching how a goat's shadow bent across spilled milk. Another insists he's been wrong more often than not, but wrong creatively. He spreads the barley in tight loops, drawing what resembles an orbital spiral. Then he pauses, dips his fingers into the dark milk, and drizzles it like paint across the barley. The pattern shimmers wetly under torchlight. "It's too dry," he says. "The moon won't bake like this. We need wind." "You can't bake the moon," a priest protests. "Then unbake it," Agun growls. There's a murmur in the crowd, and here it comes. The wager. Agun leans on his cane and announces, "If I can bring the moon back before the last oven cools, I get full temple access for 1 year and permission to rename the southern wind." Murmurs rise. No one likes when Agun names things. Last time he renamed a wind, the market smelled like vinegar for a month. Still, the high priest crosses his arms and replies, "If you fail, you spend that year as barley counter in the fermentation pits." Agun smirks. Done. The ritual resumes. He doesn't chant, doesn't bow, just moves his hands in strange patterns, adjusting the barley spiral every few minutes, turning stones by fractions, watching the sky through a curved shard of obsidian. You can't tell if he's brilliant or completely sleep-deprived. One oddity. He starts tapping a small drum with his cane. 3 slow beats, then a pause, then one sharp crack. Over and over. It's rhythmic, like he's syncing with something far above. "What's that pattern?" you ask. "It's from a tablet he found in a collapsed well," whispers a priest. He claims it's the sound the moon makes when it breathes. You blink. Does the moon breathe? He shrugs. Ask him. You don't. Minutes pass. Maybe more. The full moon is halfway back now, climbing slowly, like a shy actor returning after a wardrobe malfunction. The oven heat has started to fade, the doughs beginning to rest in their platters like sun-baked relics. Everyone's watching Agun Kalam. He crouches again, then, without warning, scatters the remaining dark milk into the wind. It catches the firelight and creates a shimmering mist. He raises his arms and yells something unintelligible, then slaps the ground with his cane. Once. A silence. Then the moon clears the shadow. Fully. Bright, round, beaming. The crowd gasps. Was it Agun's timing? A coincidence? A deeply lucky accident? Historians still argue whether these figures orchestrated their rituals to match known eclipse ends, or simply gambled with flare. Either way, it worked. The moon loaf glows again, steadier now. The high priest sighs. Fine, you may rename the southern wind. Agun grins. I shall call it Whistler of Warm Flatulence. A few priests groan audibly. You, however, can't help but smile. Maybe it's the relief. Maybe it's the barley in the air. Or maybe, just maybe, you're starting to feel like part of this lunatic family. Section 8. The moon, now fully returned, hangs fat and perfect above Babylon, as if nothing ever happened, as if it never vanished, as if it didn't need to be sung back into the sky by a limping astronomer with goat-scented breath and too many naming rights. But you know the truth. Down below, the city exhales. Somewhere, dogs bark again. Chickens resume their clucking. Someone lights a pipe with obvious relief. Someone sings. Life, with all its damp corners and burnt rice, returns to its usual hum. And you? You're handed a parcel wrapped in palm leaf and tied with a string of flax. For the smuggle, the priest tells you with a wink. Inside? A small lump of dark, crumb-speckled barley. Dough, taken from the first batch and saved before the baking. You blink at it, confused. You'll need it for the gate, he adds. The gods don't let you pass empty-handed. Ah, you've heard whispers. A secret offering is required to approach the Ishtar gate after moon rites. Not for the goddess herself. Ishtar rarely eats carbs. But for the guards posted between worlds, the ones who love stories and snacks in equal measure. And so, you descend, down the zigzagging stairs of the ziggurat, past oil lamps flickering in the night breeze, past sleepy acolytes muttering baked prayers in their sleep, down into the darker corridors where architecture forgets to be practical. The parcel in your palm is warm, soft. It smells faintly of spice and smoke, and something else. Nostalgia, maybe, or prophecy with yeast. You reach the bottom and turn toward the Ishtar Gate. It rises ahead like something from a fever dream, a wall of glazed bricks the color of wet lapis lazuli, carved with lions and bulls and dragons that seem to squint at you as you pass. Two guards lounge nearby, one leaning on a spear, the other chewing something aggressively. They straighten as you approach. "Business?" one grunts. "Moon stuff," you reply, awkwardly holding up your dough bundle. They glance at each other, then step aside, but before you pass, one holds out a hand. You hesitate, then tear off a bit of the barley dough and place it gently in his palm. He sniffs it, shrugs, and pops it into his mouth. "Tastes poetic," he says, and waves you through. You're in. Beyond the gate, a quiet path stretches between small shrines and whispering fig trees. This is not the bustling market avenue of daylight Babylon. This is the between place, where sacred errands drift through shadows and half-sentences. You follow flickering torchlight until you reach a low, flat platform shaded by tall reeds and fragrant with mint. In its center, a wide clay bowl waits, cracked slightly at the rim, blackened inside from many nights like this. You place your bundle in the bowl. There's no trumpet, no divine thunder, but the reeds rustle, and you feel a shift, as if something invisible just nodded in approval. You sit, just for a moment, just to feel the wind. This is where the bakers came to collect their ingredients, you're told. Not just the barley and honey, but the permission. The gate was a passage not only for people, but for ritual intention. Only dough blessed under moonlight and passed through this gate was considered ready. Fringe records even mention secret smuggling routes. Apprentices hauling bags of sacred flour in the dead of night, bribing guards with fermented fig paste and stories of talking lions. Apparently, Babylon had a whole underworld of mystical baking logistics. You lie back in the grass, eyes drifting up toward the moon, still glowing, still whole. The parcel in the bowl begins to steam ever so slightly, touched by moonlight. You close your eyes and imagine the journey that barley made, planted in sacred soil, harvested under a chanting sky, ground by hand, mixed with goat milk, blessed, shaped, baked, almost burned, panicked over, crumbled into offerings, turned into equations, and finally passed through the gate. All for this moment. Just as you begin to doze off, a soft voice murmurs beside you. "Did you bring the flower of rain?" You turn. A child stands there, barefoot, wrapped in loose cloth. He's holding a bowl filled with water the color of the night sky. "Rain flower?" you ask. He nods solemnly. "Barley touched by the first rain of the season. It's the only kind Nana likes cold." "Why?" He shrugs. "Because hot moons melt, cold ones whisper." You're not sure if he's reciting something or just being profoundly cryptic on purpose. Either way, he offers the bowl to you. You dip your fingers in. The water is cool, fragrant with herbs. Your fingertips tingle. The boy smiles, then vanishes behind a fig tree. You glance back at the gate. The lions are still squinting. You begin walking again, deeper into the garden of night, wondering what exactly you just agreed to by touching that bowl. A ritual? A dream? A pre-order for celestial breakfast? Hard to say. But one thing's certain, no one gets through the gate empty-handed. And you, at least, brought snacks. Section 9. You're back atop the ziggurat again, though honestly, you're not quite sure how. The path back from the Ishtar Gate blurred somewhere between fig trees and a flute-playing acolyte who may or may not have had feathers. Time's gotten syrupy. But the ovens are still glowing. The moon still floats above you, a proud silver coin that nobody seems interested in biting anymore. Except now, everyone's nervous again. "Why?" you ask, too tired for riddles. One priest answers simply, "Because it's cooling." You blink. The moon? No, he says, with the grave tone of someone who hasn't laughed since barley was invented. The loaf. Ah, the first moon loaf, the big one, golden-crusted and full of sacred promise, is beginning to cool, which, according to the mood of the priests, is apparently as dangerous as it once glowing too brightly, one priest whispers. If it cools before second crust blessings, the fields won't ripen, the cows will wander, the sky might forget which way is up. You nod, because at this point, sure, that tracks. The second crust blessing is delicate work. It's not about baking anymore. It's about the transition from sacred to symbolic, warmth to memory, dough to myth. And the Babylonians, bless them, had rules for this. You watch as two robed attendants approach the moonloaf with long-handled brushes made from dried papyrus and dipped in something sticky and fragrant. Fig varnish, one whispers, to seal the heat. The brushing begins. Gentle strokes across the crust, forming spirals and crescents, and tiny stars in a lacquer that smells like bedtime in a fruit orchard. The idea, you gather, is to preserve the loaf's spirit, its warmth, its shape, its ritual authority, before it becomes just a really fancy bread sculpture. It's not just superstition. Clay tablets have been found with diagrams on crust cooling rates, complete with lunar analogies and grain-based geometry. Historians still argue whether these instructions were metaphorical, a crust should glow like the god's smile, or literal, brush until the fig glaze sings. As they glaze, a soft humming begins. 3 women, standing behind the oven, eyes closed, swaying slightly. Their melody is simple, circular, looping like a lullaby that forgot its ending. You feel it settle around your shoulders like a warm shawl. Then someone sneezes. The humming stops. Everyone freezes. You brace for impact. Instead, one of the priests mutters, "It's fine, just a surface breeze." He flicks some water onto the loaf and resumes humming. It's a ritual full of rules and exceptions to the exceptions. One ancient tablet even includes a note. If dog howls twice, restart third chant. If thrice, add cinnamon, which, honestly, feels like something written by a baker trying to sell more spices. You lean close, trying to smell the fig varnish again, but are distracted by another priest holding up what looks like a jawbone. You blink. Is that a donkey? No, he says, mildly offended. Ass adjacent. It's symbolic. He begins tapping it rhythmically against the stone beside the loaf, not unlike a metronome for dying stars. You assume this is normal. You're wrong. Suddenly, one of the oldest priests gasps and clutches his stomach. "It's happening," he croaks. "Now?" someone asks. "Already?" The elder nods and reaches into his robe, pulling out a tiny clay tablet the size of your hand on it. A simple pictograph. Moon, wave, loaf. "The dream of dough," he whispers, eyes glassy. "I'm seeing it again." You're ushered forward. Apparently, you're now a witness. The old priest describes a vision, a loaf rising not in the oven, but in the sea. Each bubble is a wave, each crack a tide. He speaks of an ancient belief, rare, fringe even in Babylon, that the moon's reflection in water could alter the taste of bread. In fact, one inscription claims that moon bread, left overnight beside a calm pond, absorbs dreams and returns them in flavor. Another describes a failed experiment in which a priest left a loaf by the Tigris and woke up thinking he was a fish for a week. You're not sure what to believe anymore, but you do notice that as the priest describes the dream, the loaf emits a faint hiss. Steam. It's still warm inside, which means the second crust blessing might work. The attendants continue brushing. The singing resumes, now steadier, now lower. Someone begins sprinkling crushed date blossom across the edges, while another circles with a fan made of peacock feathers and goat hair. The breeze feels soft, intentional. It smells like ritual and breakfast. A small girl appears, barefoot, hair messy with sleep. She holds a bowl of salt and begins tracing lunar phases on the stone floor with it. Tiny crescents, tiny foals, all around the moonloaf, like a constellation drawn in crumbs. "She's the baker's daughter," someone whispers. "She dreams the tides." You believe it. She hums as she works, off-key, off-rhythm, but somehow perfect. Her fingers leave smudges of salt on the brick, which glow faintly in the moonlight. You're not sure if it's magic or just sweat and minerals, but either way, you're transfixed. The final glaze is applied, the loaf sits, quiet now, fully baked, fully brushed. Surrounded by salt moons, feather breezes, humming, and the increasingly heavy breathing of the elder priest, who's apparently just had another vision about crocodiles. It's done. One priest steps forward and taps the crust lightly. A low, satisfying knock echoes. "Second crust holds," he announces. Relief ripples outward like warmth through buttered dough. The moon stays. The loaf cools. The night exhales. And you? You begin to understand that this entire process, this chaotic, precise, absurdly sacred baking frenzy, isn't really about controlling the moon. It's about letting go of the need to. Section 10. You're just starting to think it might be time for a nap, or possibly a modest faint, when something flutters past your ear. A feather? No. An owl. It dips low over the ovens, silent as a secret, and lands with absolute audacity right atop the crescent-shaped kiln. Its eyes catch the firelight. They glow gold. The priests freeze mid-glaze. A fan drops. A bowl of date syrup splashes the ground like sweet mud. You hear someone gasp behind you. It's happened again. Apparently, this is not the first time the bird has made an uninvited cameo. You stare at the owl. It stares back. Unblinking. Majestic. Definitely not part of the program. For a moment, it's unclear what the official protocol is for this kind of thing. Then a priest to your left mutters, "Ishtar." You frown. Wait, the Ishtar? He nods slowly, eyes on the owl. She likes to make an appearance when things go well, or when she's bored. Historians are divided on the role of owls in Babylonian ritual. Some texts associate them with death, others with wisdom. One poem describes an owl as the mouth of shadow and the eye of dawn. But a less poetic tablet simply reads, "If owl interrupts bake, it's either a blessing or a dare." Either way, everyone's treating the bird like it might explode or start speaking. The owl hops once, then does something extremely owl-like. It defecates directly into the ashes of the waning gibbous oven. There is a long, horrified silence. One priest falls to his knees. Another starts nervously thumbing through a tablet labeled "Bird Omens and Emergency Interpretations." You suspect he skipped straight to the back. The owl swivels its head and hoots. Soft, 2 notes. Melodic. Then it lifts off, wings wide and silent, vanishing into the moonlight. "That's not good," someone says. "No," another argues. "That's very good." A third pipes up. "It depends on how many seeds were in the droppings." You rub your eyes. "Sure, let's count them," but no one does. Instead, the attention shifts quickly, like a crowd pretending not to have just witnessed something deeply awkward at a dinner party. The ritual must go on. Still, something's changed. There's a crackle in the air now. Less tension, more electricity. The kind that comes before a thunderstorm or after a really effective punchline. One priest takes the owl's contribution as an excuse to begin a secondary ritual, the flight offering. It's a lesser-known practice, mentioned only in fragments, where the bread is cut into thin spirals, resembling owl feathers, and arranged on a slate like a flock. "These are not for the gods," the priest announces solemnly. "These are for the watchers." You lean over. "What watchers?" He points skyward. "Those who sit behind the stars. They can't eat, but they like the smell." "Ah, sure." The loaf is sliced, surgical, delicate. Each cut releases steam, like the final sigh of an ancient wish. The inner bread is soft, pale gold, laced with veins of fig and smoke. It smells incredible, like memories dipped in sugar and left to warm under a desert sun. One piece is handed to a boy with a horn. He plays a short trill notes, then runs off, leaving the bread behind. This alerts the northern breeze, someone explains, as if you asked. The slices are placed on thin cedarwood planks and fanned slowly, allowing their scent to drift skyward. You watch the steam rise in curling tendrils. One swirl even looks like an owl. Probably your imagination. Probably. Another priest holds up a bowl of ground pomegranate mixed with ash and begins painting circles on the stones near the oven. Is that a map, you ask? Yes, he says. A map of where the smell is going. Of course. One spiral leads toward the Tigris, another off toward the stars. A third ends abruptly at a jagged line labeled, "Place where dreams forget to end." You decide not to ask directions. There's a brief interlude, perhaps accidental, where two junior bakers begin arguing about whether the owl was symbolic or literal. One insists it was Ishtar in disguise. The other claims it's just an owl named Kiki, who lives in the fig trees and likes warm updrafts. You're telling me the goddess of war and fertility shares a name with a bird who pooped in the sacred oven? Yes. You let that one go. Meanwhile, the flight offering slices are nearly gone, wafted into the sky or taken by priests for private rituals or midnight snacks. One is handed to you. You hesitate. Is it allowed? The priest shrugs. Technically, no. But after the owl, all bets are off. You take a bite. It's warm, rich, not sweet exactly, but meaningful. It tastes like burnt honey and river fog, like everything you've seen tonight compressed into a single moment of comfort. The priest beside you nods, chewing his own slice. We always say, he murmurs, that when the moon is satisfied, it gives back a little softness. The moon above you glows a touch brighter. Or maybe that's just the glaze reflecting in your eyes. Either way, you feel seen, and very slightly full. Section 11. The loaf is finished, the owl is gone, and for a brief, golden moment, the night feels whole again. Then the humming starts. Soft at first. Faint enough to think it's just your own ears ringing from too much sacred dough and not enough hydration. But then others notice too. Heads turn, a silence falls. And from behind a veil of incense smoke, she steps forward. A child. The same barefoot girl you saw earlier, the baker's daughter, the baker's wife. The same barefoot girl you saw earlier, the baker's wife. The same barefoot girl you saw earlier, the baker's wife. The same barefoot girl you saw earlier, the baker's wife. And finally, the same barefoot girl you saw earlier, the baker's wife. The same barefoot girl you saw earlier, still smudged with flour, still carrying her bowl of salt, but now humming louder, slow, round notes that loop and echo, like the tide lapping against a stone wall. She's sleepwalking, or maybe sleep ritualing. Her eyes are half closed, her hair loose and wild, catching bits of moonlight like a net. She walks directly to the center of the ziggurat platform and places her palm on the cooling moonloaf. A collective gasp. You'd think she set it on fire. "No one touches the crust," one priest whispers. But no one moves to stop her. Instead, the high priest, normally about as flexible as an overbaked brick, actually bows. Not a deep ceremonial nod, but a real, respectful tilt of the head. As if this girl knows something none of them do. She begins drawing on the surface of the loaf with her finger. Small, looping symbols, circles, arcs, the occasional squiggle that looks suspiciously like a fish in a hat. You hear a low mutter ripple through the crowd. She's charting tides again. It makes no sense. You're on top of a desert ziggurat. There are no tides. And yet, there are clay tablets, old ones, tucked away in obscure temple storerooms, that show strange tidal notations made centuries before Babylon had any use for coastal measurements. There's no sign of tides, no symbols or signs of torture. Black and red symbols. Several tiny symbols. Many circles. They're strange tidal notations made centuries before Babylon had any use for coastal measurements. Now, their symbols are painted on the sides of the city. It looks a little like locust fingers, stunted symbols. Most were dismissed as mythic metaphor, but some scholars believe there was something, or someone, who dreamed of tides long before seeing the sea. And here she is, drawing them in flour on the belly of a sacred loaf. She does this every year, a priest murmurs beside you. At the second cooling, you turn to him. How does she know what tides are? He shrugs. She says the moon whispers them to her in her dream. You blink. Fringe theories abound about children like her in ancient Mesopotamian lore, called ears of sin. The idea was that every few decades a child was born who could hear the rhythms of the moon not just in light or sky, but in the push and pull of nature itself. Some were astronomers, some were poets. A few, allegedly, just became surprisingly intuitive bakers. She hums louder now. The notes rise and fall in a soft spiral, matching the symbol she draws. You feel it in your chest. Not like music, more like memory. The loaf begins to steam again. Not hot, not as before, but gently, like breath on a mirror. She presses her other hand to the surface and whispers something that sounds like numbers wrapped in lullabies. Someone beside you begins to cry. Another priest kneels. The high priest closes his eyes and starts chanting. Not the usual rigid formula, but something slower, more fluid, almost like he's trying to match her hum. One of the astronomers scribbles furiously on a tablet, muttering, "She just corrected our model." You lean in. What model? The moon's declination angle, he says, wide-eyed. Her tide marks realign the crescent calibration for... Never mind. You wouldn't believe me. You believe him. The girl stops suddenly. She opens her eyes, wide and clear now, and says in a voice as calm as dawn, "The next full moon will not be round," and walks away. Not dramatically, not mysteriously, just like a child, done playing. No one follows her. You feel like you've just witnessed a moment that doesn't belong to time, like something ancient snuck back into the world for 5 minutes and used a child's hands to leave fingerprints on history. The loaf cools again. The crust stiffens, its glaze reflecting the night sky. You can still see the faint lines she drew in the flour, tidal codes, moon script, or maybe just a very ambitious doodle. Historians still debate whether moments like this were literal divine visitations, theatrical flourishes, or dream states brought on by sacred barley fumes. Either way, it's in the record now. Another wrinkle in the night. One priest clears his throat. Well then, she's done her part. Another sighs. Let's hope Nana agrees. They begin preparing for the final offering, but no one touches the loaf again. It's left as is, the salt spirals and fingertip moons intact. You step back. Heart slower now, breath soft. The moon above still glows, but now it feels like it's listening too. Section 12. The ziggurat has quieted, hushed like the end of a long, impossible song. Most of the priests have taken to kneeling or simply sitting cross-legged on the stone, eyes fixed on the moonloaf in a reverent kind of exhaustion. Even Agun Kalum, the goat-footed astronomer, has stopped muttering calculations and is now chewing thoughtfully on a piece of licorice root, possibly the closest thing to prayer he knows. And now it's time for the final act, the offering to sin. No longer a show. No more chanting or clever wordplay or owl-based chaos. This part is solemn, tender, intimate in a way that almost makes you feel like you shouldn't be watching. but you stay. Two attendants approach the loaf. One carries a clay bowl filled with Euphrates water, still cool from the river's embrace. The other holds a long spoon carved from fig wood, stained dark with what looks like ash and rose oil. You feel the scent hit before anything else. Bitter, floral, earthy. Like a memory someone tried to cook too long. The loaf is lifted. Not all of it, just a single wedge cut from its southern edge. This is the shu libu, the belly moon slice, thought to contain the most essence, the core warmth of the offering. Its crust glows faintly, the glaze catching every flicker of torchlight like dragonfly wings in slow motion. You said, I had better thoughts. How common is it? Crystals, gashes, sunset wings, cynical wings. A crusted blade so thin, the glow slightly, the glaze catching every flicker of torchlight like dragonfly wings in slow motion. They place it into the bowl. It sizzles softly as the water touches it, a gentle hiss like the breath of a sleeping god. You swear the moon pulses just slightly in the sky, maybe a trick of the eye, maybe more. You've read that ancient Babylonians believed the Euphrates connected all realms, land, sky, underworld, that it flowed not just across terrain, but between states of being. So, returning part of the moon loaf to the river was a way of sending it back to Sin, the moon god, not as tribute, but as a kind of correspondence, a message baked and signed. The high priest steps forward. His voice is softer now, the grandeur stripped away. He murmurs the final chant. Crust of our care, dough of our doing, belly of moon, be fed again. Sink through river, glow through stars, return when the sky forgets to smile. With steady hands, he tips the bowl gently. The piece of moon loaf slides into a carved channel in the stone floor, part of a network that leads to the edge of the platform, and down, 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 into a hidden chute that eventually deposits offerings into the river below. You strain to hear it hit the water. You don't. You just hear the wind shift. Slower, rounder, more wrapped. The rest of the loaf remains untouched. This, they say, must now fade naturally. No cutting, no storing, no tasting. The loaf must cool and grow stale on its own, like the moon fading toward darkness. One tablet insists that if the crust is too resilient, the next month's weather will be dry and opinionated. Another suggests a hard crust is actually a blessing because the gods enjoy crunch. Fringe believers claim the gods themselves eat the remaining loaf at dawn, invisible mouths taking phantom bites as gratitude for the ritual. More skeptical clay records hint that junior priests just sneak nibbles when no one's looking. You won't get to find out. Instead, you're handed a small clay token, a tiny moon carved into its surface, the words, foreseen and witnessed, scratched in with a stylus so fine you feel like you should squint to read it. This, you're told, is your proof that you were here, that you saw a moon, baked, broken, restored, and offered. You'll want that, the priest says, the next time the sky asks if you ever listened. You pocket it carefully. Meanwhile, the water bowl is cleaned and refilled, this time with petals and milk. It's placed beside the cooling loaf as a final gesture, moon's dessert. No one says it aloud, but it's understood. You feed the sky, and sometimes you leave a little something extra, just in case. A child begins sweeping flour from the edges of the oven, creating delicate spirals. A woman traces them with a finger, leaving smudges that resemble constellations. One priest quietly lights a bundle of myrrh, setting it to smolder inside a cracked skullcap once used by a king's stargazer. The scent lifts. So does your sense of time. You blink, and the loaf looks different again. Less like bread, more like something fossilized, like a memory pressed into crust. You glance toward the moon. It's still there, but quieter now. Its brightness has mellowed into something softer, like it's full and satisfied. The wind carries the scent of burnt fig, salt, and cooling ash. It smells like closure, and you realize, with a strange kind of ache, that it's almost over. The ritual, the night. This impossible meal between earth and sky. The loaf is offered, and so are you. Section 13. They don't clean the ovens. Not yet. You notice it when a young apprentice begins gathering the used fig brushes and polishing cloths, but a senior priest snaps his fingers and hisses, "Let it settle." There's something almost superstitious about it, as if scrubbing the bricks too soon might erase the night's memory. And as the fires dim and smoke curls into lazy script against the sky, a strange thing happens. The whispering starts. Not from the priests, not from the wind, from the crowd. Merchants, watchers, travelers like you who've stayed through the long night now begin to murmur among themselves. Not arguments, not questions, just theories. "I heard it wasn't really bread at all," someone mutters behind you. "It's a decoy. The real moon loaf was hidden in the temple of Ninlil 3 days ago." Another scoffs. "Nonsense. The loaf was symbolic. The real ritual happened in the dream temple. This was just the performance." Someone else leans in, conspiratorially. "I saw a priest swap the barley at the last minute. Political statement. Very subtle." You glance around, amused. Even after all you've seen, even after an owl practically called down a divine Yelp review, people are still trying to explain it, to pin it down, to assign meaning to what might just be cosmic pageantry. Another tablet, more reverent, calls the ritual the highest art of presence, to make something pointless with sacred intent. And that's the thing, isn't it? You start to wonder if the purpose of the ritual isn't what it achieves, but that it's done at all. Because what's more human than doing something strange, difficult, and poetic just to feel closer to the sky? One priest, an older woman with soot-streaked cheeks and a flower tucked in her belt, approaches a small group of watchers. They bombard her with questions. Did the loaf really rise on its own? Was the owl a sign? Did that girl draw the future? Was the astronomer's cane actually cursed? She shrugs, then grins. Does it matter? The group falls silent. Another priest, sitting nearby with his sandals off and a crust of bread balanced on his knee, adds, "What matters is that you were here, that you watched, that the moon didn't leave." He takes a bite. You're beginning to suspect he's not supposed to do that, but no one stops him. There's a gentle sloppiness now, an unraveling of the formal tone. Robes loosen. Tablets are packed away, with yawns. Someone starts playing a stringed instrument softly, out of tune and out of obligation. A priest nearby sighs, leans back on his elbows, and mutters, "Maybe we just like being seen by something bigger than us." You glance up. The moon is indeed looking. Maybe. Or maybe that's just what you hope it's doing. Another voice pipes up. A traveling merchant this time, retying his sandal strap. "My uncle told me the ritual is fake, that the moon rises on its own, and the bread's just a tax write-off." "Your uncle sounds fun," someone says. Laughter. Light tired, real. This too is part of the ritual, the debrief, the gentle collapse into story, skepticism, and snack sharing. It's where the myth metabolizes, where people chew over what they saw, what they imagined, and what they now remember differently. It's where legends begin. You find yourself whispering to a stranger nearby, "Girl, do you think she really heard the tides?" They shrug. Maybe she just wanted to touch something warm. And that's enough. Someone begins sketching the night in charcoal on the side of the ziggurat. Loops and loaves, a cartoon owl, a moon with teeth. Another starts composing a lullaby, mumbling verses into their hand. One person just stares at the cooling oven and whispers, "I still think we baked a god." The woman with the flower in her belt walks past you, patting your shoulder. Sleep on it. Remember, you're only past yourself. You are the future. You're only past yourself. You are the past. Perhaps you are the past. She says. So you do. You lie down on the warm stones. And the world begins to exhale. Section 14. You wake. Not fully, not sharply, but in that floaty liminal space where the air still smells of charcoal and something in your hair might be flour. The ziggurat stones are still warm beneath you. The firelight has softened into amber coals, like the embers of a long story, and before you even open your eyes, you feel it. A glow. Not from the sky this time, from the loaf. You sit up slowly. There it is, still centered in its golden platter, still crowned with the faint spirals of salt and glaze, but now softly radiant, not bright like fire, not harsh like a torch, just luminous, like a lantern with no flame. One priest, barely awake himself, rubs his eyes and whispers, "It's doing it again." "What's it doing?" you murmur. "It never cooled." He points to a sliver of steam still rising from the loaf's center. Just the faintest breath. You lean in. There's heat, yes, but more than that, life. A warmth that hums under your skin when you get too close, like standing next to someone mid-dream. You stretch out a hand. "No," a voice warns gently. It's the girl, the baker's daughter, now fully awake and standing barefoot beside the loaf again. It doesn't belong to hands anymore. You lower your fingers, and she nods, satisfied. A few others have noticed the glow now. More priests gather, sleepy-eyed, robes wrinkled but reverent. One of the astronomers, still chewing dried dates, begins scribbling something about persistent thermal anomalies on a shard of discarded pottery. "This happens once every few cycles," someone mutters. "We call it the Zinkishan. The bread that keeps." Historians have struggled with this term. Some translate it literally, claiming the priests were describing some rare combination of ingredients that preserved heat longer. Others say it was metaphorical, a sign that the gods had accepted the moon and thus left a piece of themselves behind. The most skeptical suggest it was merely residual heat trapped by clever baking techniques and theatrics. But none of those explanations quite explain this, because when you lean in, again, the loaf doesn't just glow. It pulses, ever so gently, like breath or memory. "It's said," the flower-belted priest says quietly, "that when a loaf does this, it's storing something, a piece of the night, of us, a warmth from the world that the moon has promised to return, a pause. And if it cools," she adds, "it means the promise is broken." No one speaks after that. Instead, they watch. The loaf glows. The moon above mirrors it. And for a long time, you swear they're reflecting each other. You remember a clay tablet you once glimpsed in a museum, the kind no one really reads, just glances at. It had a strange inscription. "A moon once baked never fully cools. It waits, quiet, for the breath of another dreamer." One priest begins carefully constructing a small shrine beside the loaf, not to preserve it in a glass case or lock it in a vault, but simply to honor its glow. They build a low wall of reeds and date branches around it, then place a handful of sesame seeds in the corners. "Why sesame?" someone asks. "Because they were the first to sprout under the moon," the girl replies. Of course they were. Another priest sets down a tiny figurine carved from obsidian, a tiny goat-footed man with one hand raised. You stifle a smile. A gun column, it seems, has fans. And then you notice a curious thing. No one's looking at the real moon anymore. It's still up there, brilliant and bright, but it's the loaf everyone is focused on now. Its glow, its breath, its mystery. Like the sky's attention has been flipped upside down. And maybe, just maybe, that's the point. A loaf that mirrors the moon. A moon that sees itself reflected. A ritual so bold, it dares the cosmos to look back and nod. You lie down again, this time closer to the shrine. The warmth from the loaf eases into your ribs like comfort food for the soul. Around you, others do the same, resting, breathing, exhaling in time with the faint rise and fall of the loaf's pulse. A priest whispers, half asleep, "Do you think it'll ever cool?" Another murmurs, "Only when it's forgotten." You close your eyes and make a quiet promise not to forget. Section 15. You wake, again, this time to a rustling sound, soft and close. You open one eye and see a priest hunched over the edge of the platform, his back to you, digging through the folds of his robe with suspicious intensity. You pretend not to notice, but you're definitely watching. After a moment, he straightens and pulls something small and wrapped from a hidden inner pocket. It looks like a soft pouch made from palm fiber cloth, barely the size of your palm. Your hand shakes slightly but demurs. You wake. You pull the blankets back from your head to look at them. Something small and wrapped from a hidden inner pocket. It looks like a soft pouch made from palm fiber cloth, barely the size of your palm. You wake. You start to scratch and you reach up. You toss the pouch and it spins in the air. It's lightly filled with something and it spawns in the air. He holds it close to the fireless oven and whispers something you can't hear. Then, as quietly as a bedtime lie, he opens the pouch. Inside, a small, shimmering fragment of something familiar. You blink. It's a piece of crust, curved, glinting faintly with fig varnish, still warm despite the cold dawn wind licking over the ziggurat. You recognize that texture, the spiral etching, the faint salt dust. It's from the first moon loaf, the main one, the sacred one that no one was supposed to touch after the second crust blessing. And yet, here it is, in a priest's pocket. He holds it like a relic, or maybe a stolen note from the gods. You can't tell if he's praying or just remembering something he meant to do. And then, without flourish or fear, he eats it. The man chews slowly, reverently. You hear a sigh, not from him, but from the wind itself. You sit up, stunned. He glances over, sees you watching. Instead of guilt, he offers a small, tired smile. "Just a crumb," he says. You tilt your head. "Is that allowed?" He shrugs. "I was the one who mixed the honey. I'm not sure if that makes it more sacred or more forgivable." You shuffle closer. "What did it taste like?" He pauses. Then, memory. You blink. Memory of what? He looks at you, and for the first time his eyes soften, not with mysticism or ceremony, but with something human. Tired. Honest. "It tasted like what I hoped it would taste like." He brushes crumbs from his fingers into the ash, then leans back and stares up at the brightening sky. The moon is still there, pale now, retreating. The loaf shrine glows faintly, but the heat has finally begun to fade. "Why did you keep it?" you ask. "Because I didn't believe the ritual would work this time," he replies. "I wanted proof. A fragment. Something I could hold when the sky stayed dark. Did it help?" He doesn't answer. Instead, he reaches into his robe again and pulls out another object. Smaller this time. Not food. A thin, bent token of bronze. He presses it into your palm. It's shaped like a crescent. Half-baked, slightly melted, the edges scorched, but it gleams like something precious that survived a fire. "Every priest makes one," he says. A keepsake from the night the sky almost didn't come back. You turn it in your hand. It's heavier than it looks. And now, you ask? Now I don't need it anymore, he says. But you might. You look down at the crescent again. The groove in the center could be a bite mark, or just a scar in the mold. Or maybe it was made that way, half moon, half burned. You tuck it into your sash. The priest stands. Come on, he says. Let's go watch the moon leave. You rise and follow him to the edge of the platform. The horizon is silvering, the first faint threads of dawn unraveling across the sky. The moon dips lower, fainter now, fading like a candle after a promise has been kept. He speaks again, this time quietly. I've seen over 20 of these. Moonbakes? He nods. They never go how you expect. The dough cracks, the fire hisses, a goat steals the barley. One time, the oven caught fire and the loaf rose anyway, and sometimes he trails off. You wait. Sometimes the moon shows up right on time, he finishes, and you don't know whether to feel proud or relieved. You look again at the shrine. The loaf is still glowing, but softer now, dimming like a firefly settling into sleep. Will anyone else eat a piece? You ask. No, he says. They've all made their peace. The rest will crumble on its own. And if it doesn't? He smiles. Then we know next month will be stubborn. You chuckle. The wind picks up. The sky pales further. The first bird calls from a fig tree far below. You hold your crescent token tighter. It's still warm. Just a little. And you realize some nights don't end, they just settle. Into silence, into story, into your pocket. Section 16. Dawn arrives not with trumpets or epiphanies, but with the soft, gradual surrender of shadow. The ovens are quiet now. No fire, no smoke, just warm bricks breathing out their last sighs. The ash has settled into stillness. The moon, pale and bashful, sinks lower behind the distant rooftops of Babylon, as if embarrassed by all the attention. You stand at the edge of the ziggurat, barefoot on sandstone, watching the sky change color grain by grain. Behind you, the final traces of ritual are being cleared, gently. No scrubbing, no broom hurling, just the subtle removal of props from a very slow play. The brushes are gathered, the bowls emptied, the salt spirals scuffed gently by hands too reverent to sweep with anything harsher. A woman with a sleepy smile collects the owl feather fan. Someone else folds the cloth that carried the barley offering. And someone from the farm comes to help in the weeding screen or bring an herb to the pot, before putting a spiral scuffed gently by hand to carry the. One priest leans over the shrine and whispers something you can't hear, then presses his palm to the crust of the now cooling moonloaf and walks away, slowly, as if afraid to turn around. The warmth has faded, not gone, not cold, just finished. You notice now how quiet the ziggurat has become. No chants, no calculations, just the occasional cough, the creak of someone stretching, the distant yawn of the city returning to itself. One by one, the priests begin descending. The high priest goes first, shoulders squared, head bowed, not in defeat, but in a kind of release. His work is done. So is the work of everyone here. The bakers, the astronomers, the girl with dreams of tides, the goat-footed man who renamed a wind, even the owl. You're among the last to leave. As you pass the loaf shrine one last time, you can't help but pause. The glaze is cracked now. A fig seed has burst near the center, leaving a stain that looks suspiciously like a question mark. You don't touch it. Instead, you whisper a thank you. Not to a god, not to the loaf, but to the night itself, for being strange enough to matter. And then you walk. Down the stairs. Down through the corridors that still smell of sesame and memory. Down past the oven mouths, their insides still glowing faintly like tired eyes refusing to close. You pass the place where the girl traced salt tides on the floor. The marks are fading. She's gone now. Or maybe you dreamed her. Maybe she dreamed you. By the time you reach the ground, the city is stirring. Vendors begin laying out bread and fruit in the early light. Chickens cluck, children tug on their mother's sleeves. Somewhere, someone's trying to tune a lyre and failing spectacularly. And no one, not a single person, mentions the moon. Because that's not how it works. The ritual is never recounted in full. It's not rehashed over tea or carved into stone. It lives in glances, in half-phrases, in crust crumbs left in a robe pocket. It's a thing you carry quietly. And so you do. You tuck the bronze crescent token deeper into your sash. You feel its weight. You feel the heat, now just a memory. And you walk. The moon sets, the oven's empty. The sky forgets. A little. But you don't. Not entirely. Not ever. You lie back on your bed now, far from Babylon, far from fig-glazed crusts and glowing dough, but still warm from the memory of it. The sounds fade slowly. The hum of sacred drums. The hiss of barley in moonlit water. The hush that came just before a priest whispered nonsense into a very serious feather. All of it begins to soften, and you let it. Your limbs grow heavier. The story slides back like a tide returning to sea, leaving little crescent shells of detail in its wake. An owl with opinions, a child who heard the tides, a loaf that never quite cooled. You let those images sit in your mind like glowing coals. And then you breathe out. The ziggurat is distant now. A dream inside a dream. The kind you might wake from and half remember, only to find the scent of flour on your pillow and a tiny bronze crescent by your side. Maybe the moon was baked that night. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was just about trying. And trying is enough. The stars turn, the sky forgets, the city sleeps. And you've earned your rest. Sleep well, baker of dreams, watcher of loaves, whisperer of salt tides. The night is yours now. Let it cool, let it keep, let it go. Sweet dreams.